Thank you very much. Thank you to the festival for having me here, and also to the Northern Ireland Festival and the British Council for bringing some of us over as well to share some of our science with you. So I feel quite unusual actually sitting down doing a talk, but I'd actually hurt myself at football on Sunday, so I feel like it would be not very moral or politically correct to say the person in the crutches wasn't very good, so I think we'll just all agree that this will go very well. I love talking about science. I'm a science communicator, and I talk about science at festivals. I talk about science on the radio, literally to anybody who'll listen. And the kind of science that I enjoy talking about is the science that's in the everyday. I wasn't very interested in science whenever I was at school because I felt like I couldn't really relate to it. I felt like I wasn't particularly good at it, and it wasn't very creative in things. But since then, and since I started studying science at university, I found that there is literally science everywhere, and it's in the everyday, and there's no reason that it shouldn't be interesting to everyone. So that's the kind of thing that I like to talk about for people, and try and get people maybe who are a little underrepresented into science, and get women and girls and things into science, just to show that science is for everyone. And my favourite kind of science is sexy science. So people usually think science isn't very sexy, it's not very cool. And since I've come to love science, I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think that there's so many things that are fascinating about science. And one of my favourite things to talk about is the science of love. Is anyone here in love? Has anyone ever been in love? Put your hands up, we'll do a show of hands. Is anyone, are you two a couple? Yeah, 'cause she didn't put her hand up. I felt like you whispered to her, put your hand up, you're embarrassing me. So there's quite a few people here. Does everyone feel generally like they've fallen in love at some point? Yeah, it's a pretty nice feeling, isn't it? But it's quite a scary feeling. And whenever I was 16, I fell in love for the first time. Well, I thought I'd fallen in love. And I was really obsessed with the person. I couldn't stop thinking about them. And then I had all these weird side effects. Like I couldn't really eat and I couldn't really sleep. And I thought, this is absolutely bizarre. There must be something scientific in this. And I started to look up what love was made of, what love came from. And everything that I saw about love was from great artists or great romantics or great writers. And one of the things that I saw was that Van Gogh said, love is a mystery in a mystery. And I thought, that's really beautiful. That's a lovely way to describe it. But that's not really what I was looking for. So I started to ask people around me what love meant to them. And I asked my sister, and she said, love is completeness. And I thought, that's all right, but not exactly what I'm looking for. I kind of asked one of my friends, and they said love is when you want to hang out with someone forever. And I thought that was quite a nice way to put it. And I asked my dad, and he said, Emer, I've no idea. And after a bit of a chat with my mum, he said that love was very important. So I decided that I wanted to figure out what love was according to science. And there's a great kind of biological social anthropologist called Helen Fisher who has separated love into a couple of different stages. So I want to go through that journey with you today. The most Googled question in 2012 was, what is love? And I kind of thought, that means that I'm not the only person who's quite confused by this. I'm not the only person who wants to know what love is and why it's so important to humans. I had so many things I wanted to find out. So in this journey of love, in the 3 stages, we begin at stage 1, which is lust. So at puberty, 2 sex hormones become active in the body, as we all know. We've got our estrogen and our testosterone. And from then on in, we are constantly on the prowl for somebody to reproduce with. We're always looking for a partner. We're always looking for who's going to be our mate, which I find fascinating. It's kind of ingrained into us. It's programmed into us. And I always think it's really important if you tell people to make a quick first impression. I feel like there's a couple of people in the audience who are like, I've used that one before. Make a really good first impression, because the way that you're supposed to get someone to be attracted to you is by flirting with them. And your first chat up line is very important because there was a study that showed how quickly someone will make an impression on you, or how quickly you'll decide what you think of someone, and you decide if you're going to like someone or be attracted to someone or not in less than a second. So do make your first impression count. I wouldn't advise using this chat up line because people think you're just calling them fat, but it is really important. First impressions count. And something I find interesting is the fact that we as humans can be quite good. You know, with rejection, you go through your life, there's so many people that you maybe like who don't like you back, and vice versa. And we're quite good with that. We're quite good with moving on to the next person. But animals, interestingly enough, aren't as good. So if you take this little guy, this is the flirty male wolf spider. If he approaches an unwilling female, she doesn't just retreat away from him, she actually eats him. So I always think, yeah, exactly. If you're rejected on a night out, it's not that big of a deal because at least nobody's eating you. So I like to talk about what we're attracted to, or what is the thing that makes us like specific people. Why do we end up with our chosen partner instead of someone else? And what attracts other people to us? So this is probably kind of like scientifically backed tips for being attractive if you're looking for someone. Is anyone here single? Quite a lot of people. This is great. Okay, just keep your hands up so we can decide on the attractiveness of. Okay, so there's a lot of single people, so you can listen and take note of this. One of the things we're attracted to is the color red. So millions of years ago, our ancestors developed this ability to see ripe red fruits amongst green leaves. And kind of from then on in, we've always been a little bit obsessed with red. Red has always been hardwired into our brain as being something that we find really attractive. If you look around, there are quite a few people wearing red, actually. More towards the back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's probably about 20 people wearing red. Yeah, there's a guy waving. If everyone turns around, look, there's a guy waving. Look, wearing red. He's here, he's on the prowl, he's looking. It is a very interesting thing. And if you think about companies, like a lot of companies like Coke and McDonald's and KFC, they all use red because it's a really good marketing technique. So we use it as a marketing technique for ourselves, but they use it for their products. And even looking at somebody who's wearing red can have these kind of feelings of quickening the pulse and causing feelings of excitement. So there have been quite a few studies that look at whether a colour that you wear will actually change the outcome of things like a date. And there was a study back in 2008 where they got these men to go on dates, and they went on dates with women who were wearing all different colours. Some women were in red, some were in white, some were in black, and they consistently rated the woman in red as more attractive and also spent more money on those dates. So if anybody's on Tinder or anything, I would probably advise that you go in red on the date if you want a little bit more money spent on you. And there has been other studies that look at, well, what if we don't just look at the people who are on the date? What if we look at how colours can influence just how much money someone will spend? And there was a study that looked at waitresses, and they got waitresses on different nights, again, to spend different to wear different colours, and the waitresses who were wearing red instead of white got much higher tips, which is interesting. You know, that colours can influence you so much. And just as a bit of a side note, that kind of made me think about how susceptible humans are to marketing, even if it's really subtle, like colours. And we kind of react in the same way to music, because there was a similar study that got people to walk around a shop and buy wine. And whenever they played French music, the people bought 3 times more of the French wine, and they didn't even realise the music was playing. So the power of persuasion with humans is very, very strong. Now, I know I'm talking about things you're attracted to, so it sounds a bit weird to put your parents in here. So you're not actually attracted to your parents, but there have been studies that show your parents can impact who you will be attracted to in the future. And I know people have always said things like, oh, he'll end up with someone like his mum, or she's going to be that guy who seems very like her dad. But if your parents are geriatric parents or mature parents, whenever they have you, think if they're over the age of 30, you're more likely as an adult to be attracted to more mature looking people or people with more mature qualities. Likewise, if your parents have you whenever they themselves are very, very young, then you are more likely to be attracted to people who maybe have a bit of a baby face or maybe have more childlike features. Something else that can attract you to someone is voices. Is there anyone here who has ever liked someone because they had a nice voice? Yeah. Oh, it's mostly girls put up their hand. It's mostly women put up their hand there. That was interesting. So most of the studies have actually looked at how women react to men's voices. And people usually say, well, it's because, you know, people are more automatically attracted to women with light, breathy voices, so we already know that, so we're going to investigate men and their voices. And one of my favourite studies that I saw about this was men who were shown a variety of photographs of different women. So these different women were kind of varying levels of attractiveness. Some of them were really beautiful, some of them were maybe considered not so beautiful, but they got all these pictures shown to them. And they would then rate the women on how attractive they found them. And then what they didn't tell the guys were that they were going to get them to call those women. So they got them, and whenever they called the people that they found less attractive, they just spoke in their normal voice. So they called them up and they were like, hi, how's it going? Yeah, my name's whatever, everything's fine. But then they got them at the end of the experiment to call the woman that they found most attractive. So the men called the woman up and suddenly their voices changed and they were like, hello? And they made their voices super, super deep. And after being interviewed after, they hadn't realised that they were doing it. But what they were doing was subconsciously trying to signal that they had deeper voices because they had higher levels of testosterone. And because that woman couldn't see them, they were trying to imply that they were a very masculine, attractive, healthy man. And I just thought, you know, that was bizarre, but we do have a bit of a thing about voices. So something else that can kind of influence our attraction. Is anyone hungry at the minute? Quite a few people. Right, this is good. This is lunchtime. So right now I'm probably looking more attractive to you guys than I otherwise would. If you are feeling hungry, I thought this was a very interesting study. It can slightly skew what kind of person you are attracted to. So usually you might have a specific type of person, maybe someone who's tall, maybe someone who has a certain body type or certain hair color. But there's a very, very interesting study that said if you are hungry, you will be slightly more likely to be attracted to someone who is a heavier weight than someone you would normally be attracted to. And I read that and I thought, that doesn't sound, I'm not too sure about that. But then I thought about it and it makes sense because in terms of our evolution, if someone is a heavier weight, if someone looks like, you know, they've got access to food, you think, that's the person with the resources. That's the person I'm going to hang out with. That's the person who's going to provide for my family. So then the study has actually shown people, you know, pictures and things. And when the people were hungry, they were more likely to find people attractive who were a little bit heavier. And I think that kind of little bit of evolution from attractiveness that's been left within us is very, very fascinating. So there has always been a lot of talk over time about being symmetrical and how symmetry can be very sexy. And I always heard talk, you know, whenever I was younger, I remember once my math teacher in school, and I never really knew what she got. She was obviously trying to get us interested in maths, and I remember her talking to us about symmetry being important. And she had said something about Angelina Jolie had been chosen as the most attractive person in the world because she's so symmetrical. And I thought, well, yes, she is beautiful, but I didn't really get at the time what she was saying. But I've got it since then. So there is a thing that if you are symmetrical, your face is nice and symmetrical. Basically, if there is nothing that looks like you've been impaired or anything as you've grown up, it basically means that all through your gestation, all the time you've been developing and everything, you've been very healthy, you've had strong genes, there's nothing genetically that seems different about you, and that should translate as someone being quite perfectly symmetrical. So scientists were like, well, people who are symmetrical then are more likely to have an easy chance with a mate because they look like the perfect product of someone that you would want to reproduce with, basically. So what scientists did was they decided, I'm going to try and make scientifically like a really sexy symmetrical person. So they got all these people and they got people to choose what their favorite features were, but then they measured them and tried to get the most symmetrical features. And these were the two people that they came up with. So you can see the guy, he's the most symmetrical guy that the scientists could come up with. But they then matched celebrity faces to these two kind of characters. And does anyone here find David Beckham attractive? Yeah, quite a few people. So there's a boy at the back who someone's lying on. He's just put his hand up. He's very, very attractive. So 1, 2, 3. His features were mapped to every single feature of the scientifically symmetrical, perfect man, David Beckham. His face shape, his eyebrows, his eyes, his nose, and his mouth. But there were also other celebrities that came up over and over again. Are there any Brad Pitt fans? Anyone thinks he's attractive? Yeah, and what about Ryan Gosling from The Notebook? Yeah. Oh, everyone's put their hands up for him. So they kind of came up over and over again as well. His nose is like Brad Pitt, his mouth is like Brad Pitt, his face. And then there were a couple of little randoms in there, Bradley Cooper, Ashton Kutcher, but basically all very pretty celebrities. Their faces and their features could be mapped to this guy. So then they decided to see if they could figure out what the most symmetrically beautiful woman was. And I actually thought she looked a bit like, do you know Mila Kunis from Black Swan? I thought she looked very like her, but her features actually weren't part of it. She just happens to be another very beautiful symmetrical woman. And her features were kind of mapped to other celebrities, and they found that she had a lot of features of Scarlett Johansson, Emilia Clarke, Natalie Portman, and Angelina Jolie as well. And I think a lot of celebrities that we would consider very attractive, you could map at least one of their features onto these. So something else that we find attractive is someone's smell or someone's scent. Do you ever walk past someone and you think, oh my God, they smell so good? Like someone's wearing a really nice aftershave or perfume. I love that as well, but this is like more an integral scent. So MHC genes are something that control your immune system, but they also give you your natural scent. And there was a really, really famous experiment where it was a bit of a gross experiment actually, where women were asked to smell t-shirts that men had been wearing. And they had to decide from those t-shirts, they had to rate the men on how attracted they were to them. But it sounds a bit weird when you think about it, but the thing that was interesting about it was that women overwhelmingly preferred the smell of t-shirts belonging to men who had the opposite MHC genes to their own. So if you remember, I said MHC genes control your natural scent, but they're also building blocks of your immune system. And the reason this was so interesting was because if you were to go on and reproduce with someone who had opposite MHC genes to your own, if you have a child, that child is more likely to have a really varied and strong and healthy immune system. So opposites really attract in terms of your natural scent. And it's funny to me because it's not something you're even aware of. So do you ever be on a night out or like dancing with someone and there's just something about them and you just think, people usually say I have a wee bit of chemistry with them. I can't put my finger on it. I always think it's MHC genes. So another thing, something that kind of throws a spanner in the works a little about this is the contraceptive pill. So there has been a bit of chat recently. So if you take the pill, it tricks your body into thinking that you're pregnant. That's how it works. It tricks your body into thinking you're already pregnant, so you don't need to be pregnant again. That's how it works. And the interesting thing about it is because your body thinks you're pregnant, if you're on a night out, your body won't be looking for your MHC gene complementary partner. So it'll take someone who doesn't have complementary genes with you. And what can happen then is maybe you date that person and you're still taking the pill and everything. Then maybe you get married to that person and you decide, oh, maybe I want to have a child. So you stop taking the pill. And then you think, actually, I don't have as much chemistry with that person as I thought I had. Because you haven't found your opposite partner. You haven't found the person that you maybe would have found otherwise. And people more recently actually started to talk about kind of a correlation between the amount of people taking the pill and divorce rates, because after people actually start trying to have a child with someone, they realise there's something's a bit off here. I don't fancy them as much as I thought I did. Now, I want you to take a look, since we're talking about attractiveness, I want you all to take a good look at these two pictures. Okay? And I'm going to ask you to raise your hand as to who you find more attractive. So take a proper look and look at all the features, the eyes and the mouth and everything. Okay. So if you find picture 1 more attractive, will you put up your hand? Oh, it's quite a lot of people. And quite a lot of the guys too. Perfect. And if you find picture 2 more attractive, put up your hand. Okay. This one is a bit more worrying for the guys, because if you've put up your hand for picture 2, it's more likely that you're currently ovulating. Because there was a study that showed, I think these 2 guys in the front row might be ovulating. There was a study that showed that women are attracted to different types of men, or men who have different looks, depending on if they're ovulating or not. And I just find that really interesting. So this is obviously the same person, but the picture has been modified either way to kind of accentuate or to hide some of the characteristics. So picture 2 is classically more masculine because of the way the picture has been manipulated. So he's got a much stronger, larger forehead, straighter eyebrows, a stronger, straighter jaw, and a longer, straighter nose. Whereas the other guy is still very attractive, and a lot of people find him attractive, but he is slightly more feminine looking, or slightly gentler looking. So studies have shown that the reason people will be more attracted to picture 2 is because of those more masculine characteristics. If we think back about the voice study, is that it's more likely that this man has higher levels of testosterone, which has given him more masculine features, and as I said, will be more likely to produce stronger, healthy offspring. So obviously during the time of ovulation, that's the time you're looking for someone to produce stronger, healthy offspring for. And I put this up one time, and someone said to me, but I really liked picture 1. Like, I found picture 1 really attractive. Is there something wrong with me? Like, I'm more attracted to feminine men. So I always think a lot of the celebrities that we have, a lot of the boys are quite pretty. So we've tried to pick the prettiest ones. So Johnny Depp, obviously, Zac Efron, Jared Leto, Justin Bieber, literally everyone who's ever been in a boy band. And a lot of people, like, do people find anyone in that picture attractive? Yeah, show of hands just so we can see. Yeah, so quite a lot of people. So someone said to me, but what about me? I like more feminine looking men. What does that mean? Is there something wrong with me? But there were studies looking at this as well, because quite a lot of men do look like this. And the studies show that while the more masculine, testosterone, heavy fueled men will be more likely to provide genetically healthy children, the more feminine looking men in studies have been seen, and in evolution have been seen to be more cooperative, more friendly, better parents, and a better long-term partner, and better at raising children. So you kind of have to choose which one of those 2 things that you want. But the thing to do probably in terms of science, not in terms of morals, but in terms of science, would probably be to have the baby with the stronger man and get one of these guys, like Zac Efron, to raise it. That would probably be the ideal situation. So we're going to do the same thing with this lovely woman. So picture 1, picture 2. I want you to put up your hand if you find picture 1 more attractive. Oh, almost everyone. Okay. And what about picture 2? Still a few people. Okay, so it's the same principle really. So picture one would be someone who is classically seen as more feminine. So they have changed these pictures to look like she has got higher levels of estrogen, and higher levels of estrogen are usually correlated with attractiveness or beauty. And then those higher levels are usually associated with higher levels of fertility as well. So that's our stage one complete. There's actually quite a lot that goes into that, isn't it? It's probably not just as easy and straightforward as you think. But once you're out of that stage one, you kind of move on to the stage which I think is the most interesting stage, which is stage 2, romantic attraction. So this is when you are head over heels in love, like Romeo and Juliet, like you're obsessed. Is anyone in this stage right now, like really madly in love? You two, are you? Yeah. Oh, that's so cute. Everyone turn around and look at them. They're very cute. So see this couple. How long have you been gone out? Oh, that's good, because it usually wears off at 3 months. So you're going well. Congratulations. It's lovely, because usually everyone just says, no, none of us. Nobody's madly in love, so that's really nice. So this is the real kind of obsessive stage. Usually it happens to you when you're a teenager, or if you're an adult, it happens, and it usually lasts around 3 months before it wears off. And people usually associate this part of love with your heart. People say, I give you my heart. Well, no one's ever said that to me, but in books and stuff, people say that. Or, he was broken-hearted, or I love you with all my heart. But the real magic in this part actually happens within your brain. And there's an area in the brain called the Caudate Nucleus. And a scientist got all these people and interviewed them to see what stage of love they were at. So they took people like you, like the couple who are madly in love, and they put the madly in love people in an MRI scanner. And they scanned their brains, and they got them to think about the person they were in love with. And they saw that there were these areas that lit up whenever they were talking about the person or thinking about them. And it was very unexpected results. So one of the areas was an area called the Caudate Nucleus. So it's an area that helps us expect and detect rewards. And the rewards, obviously, in this case, is love. And the second area is an area you can see up. It's down at the very bottom. It's kind of buried deep within the brain, called the ventral tegmental area. And it nearly acts like this little chemical making factory within your brain. I like to think of it as the little Cupid in your brain. And it makes all these little arrows of love drugs, and it shoots them out throughout your brain and body to create a multitude of side effects. And I always like to think of it as a chemical cocktail. So this cocktail stimulates the same area of the brain as cocaine with similar side effects, like increased heart rate and really obsessive thoughts, and ultimately addiction. So I think whenever you say you're in love, I think you're usually just a wee bit chemically insane. And the ingredients that are in the cocktail are very interesting. It's kind of a mix of feel-good hormones. So you've got dopamine, really, really feel-good, high-feeling hormone. Oxytocin, which is a love hormone. And then your serotonin levels become quite low whenever you're in love. And the other condition where your serotonin levels are low are if you have obsessive compulsive disorder. So the way that you can't stop thinking about someone over and over again, that's why. Now, people will usually say to me, do animals fall in love? We don't care about humans. What about animals? Do they fall in love? And does anyone here have a dog? Yeah, your dog definitely loves you, don't they? So I've got a puppy as well. And I think he's the cutest thing. He totally loves me. Animals definitely have those emotions. And there was a study that showed that seals, when they're in love, have the same side effects as humans. And one of those side effects is that they lose half their entire body weight whenever they're in love. So you know how we can't eat sometimes when we're in love? Seals feel the same thing. And actually, male elephants, during the mating season, whenever they're loving a whole load of lady elephants, they get so frail and exhausted from all the love that they actually have to go back to their herd for months to rest, to build their strength back up. So that's our stage 2, attraction complete. And do you know how I said your brain kind of, it feels the same as like a cocaine-like high, and it stimulates that same area of the brain? Well, your brain isn't really able to survive in that kind of drugged up state forever, so it has to sober up. And what happens is it sobers up and the cocaine-like high disappears, and your brain is taken over by these opiate-like pain-killing drugs, which lead you to stage 3, which is attachment. Is anyone here married? Yeah, so this is kind of the stage of if you're married or if you've been with someone for a very long time. This is the nice, comfortable stage, you know. So, you know, whenever you're at this stage, your body releases this love glue, which is oxytocin, the hormone I talked about earlier. And in terms of evolution, that's to kind of keep you together long enough to raise a family. So for our ancestors, that could have kept them together, you know, for 3 or 4 years till the child was through infancy, and then they could let them go. And I always think if it's such a scientific process, surely everybody should just live happily ever after. And like nobody ever breaks up, do they? Like nobody gets divorced, nobody falls in love with someone else. Well, I think the reason that those things happen is because humans are involved in this. And obviously we make a lot of mistakes and do a lot of those kind of things. And I think it's interesting because some people will go through all 3 of those stages of love, and some people won't go through any of them. Some people might just stay in stage 1, lust, forever. I always think there's someone in the group of friends, you know, who's always in that stage 1. Or someone can be something that we would call stage 2 junkies, where they get addicted to that cocaine-like high of falling in love. So those are the people who are changing their Facebook relationship status every week because they're craving that hit of love over and over again. And of course, there's some people who can be in 3 stages with 3 different people. So maybe someone is married in a long-term relationship and they're in stage 3. But maybe it's like, you know, Love Actually, and they're secretly madly in love with their boss at work. So they're also in stage 2. And then they kind of might have a bit of a thing for someone they get the bus with, you know, stage 1. So you can kind of feel all the stages at the same time. And I think one of the things that has really changed how we love is technology. Has anyone here tried online dating, like including Tinder and everything? Yeah. Usually, yeah, it seems to be some of the younger people in the room. It is really interesting how it has changed things, and I think digital dating has had probably the biggest impact on relationships over time than anything has. Do people remember Match.com? It was out years ago. It kind of kick-started everything, and it had so many users. There's a woman smiling over there. I don't know if that means that she's been on it. She's hiding her face now. But 1 in 5 relationships, whenever Match was in its prime, started online. And I think the number now is much higher than that. And people, if they meet online, don't tend to tell people for some reason. So the number's definitely higher. But the owner of Match.com said a couple of years ago that over 1 million babies had been born as a result of Match.com relationships. And I don't know how he counted all those babies, but I'm pretty sure there are quite a few more than he knows about. And everything kind of changed in 2012 whenever Tinder came on the scene. Is anyone on Tinder specifically? Yeah. There's 1 truthful person in the room and a lot of liars as well. So yeah, statistically, there's probably a lot of people in this room on Tinder. I think it's interesting because every day there's over 1 billion matches on it. People use it obsessively. So many of my friends have, you know, fallen in love from Tinder, got married from Tinder, and I just think it's fascinating. And I think it's interesting because we have Tinder in nearly every country in the world, I think. And if you think about what we don't have in some countries, like water, it's just interesting to think how Tinder can be so important to us. And I quite like looking at the facts of Tinder and the statistics. And you know how it works. If you like someone, you swipe right. Yeah. People are nodding even though they're not on Tinder. So you swipe right if you like someone. So women swipe right 14% of the time. So it seems normal that you might be attracted to 14% of the population, whereas men swipe right 46% of the time, which means men are attracted to 46% of the people on Tinder. And that just blows my mind. I just think that's fascinating. I don't know if they're even looking, they're just swipe, 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 swipe. And, you know, I talk about the science of love and the science of attraction. And people kind of tend to think that technology and science in terms of love are two things that wouldn't go well together. And they'd ask me, you know, what do you think? What do you think about Tinder? And in some ways, it is difficult because you kind of miss out on that chemistry of meeting someone and being with someone. Like I said about the MHC genes, you don't get that. And you're also kind of seeing someone's best version of themselves. So there's so many people, I'm sure, have turned up to their Tinder date and they don't even recognize them because they don't look anything like how they looked in their perfect selfie. But at the same time, I think for relationships, it's a really good thing because it really widens your pool of people that you could find. And I always think the great thing about Tinder, for example, some of my close friends who have met people on Tinder, is that you have maybe met the perfect person that you never would have met otherwise, or that you never would have had access to. So I think it's just a really nice thing in terms of how technology and science and love all kind of meet, and how they can all complement each other. So thank you so much for listening to my talk on the science of love. I'm Emer Maguire. Thank you.